The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
There we go. All right.
You want me to roll it up?
Hold on. Let's see. Hello, everyone. This is Elizabeth from All Chicago. Is everyone able to see me?
I can see you, Elizabeth. I don't think most people on the call are going to be able to talk to you because they have muted phones. So,
someone. Oh yeah, I got yes from Jenny and Rebecca. Thank you. Thanks, Beth, for sharing. I forgot about that piece. Okay, so everyone, welcome to our CoC Youth Action Update webinar call. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a lot of fun, exciting things to talk about with everyone, and you'll be pleasantly surprised to know that I will not be the only person that you'll get to see today. Unfortunately, Carrie Moy from the Department of Family and Support Services is unable to join the call today. She got called into jury duty, but she wishes that she was here to share all this fun updates that we have to share. But my name is Elizabeth Perez, and I am from All Chicago, and I am one of the project managers for the youth line of homelessness under the CoC Action Agenda. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So with that, I will turn it over to Beth to share the updates regarding the Youth Data Work Group.
thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. This is Beth. It's great to be here today. As part of the data work group, hopefully this won't come as news to you. We've been rolling out a new question for the intake assessment. So hopefully you've all participated in a recent training with All Chicago about the changes in HMIS. And what we've done is add a question that asks about young people's sexual orientation. The question that's been added asks, which of these sexual orientations best describes how you identify, and offers then a number of options, including the option to say other and then specify the response. We've added this question to the assessment in part so that we can start contributing the information to a national dashboard with Away Home America that tracks how young people are doing as they navigate homelessness, and particularly are interested in young people's sexual orientation because of the disproportionate experience young people who identify as LGBTQ are in experiencing homelessness. We came to the question and were able to determine that it was the right one and how to structure it through some help of some young people connected to Center on Halstead, who participated in a focus group to help inform what the question would be and how it would get used, and are so excited that it's now rolled out, and look forward to being able to track and make sure that all young people in Chicago are doing as well as they can in our system. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Great. Thanks, Beth. All right. So if anyone is interested in knowing more about the Youth Data Work Group, you can always feel free to reach out to Beth or to Carrie and myself. Next thing that we want to talk about, many of you may have seen, if you are part of the Task Force listserv, you got an email from Carrie last week regarding the Youth Strategy Check-in Survey. So because, as we all know, we have a lot of exciting new developments and we're very fast-paced, so we wanted to make sure that before we kind of dove into a lot of the work that is coming up, either through work with ICF, 100-Day Challenge, and YHDP, which we'll talk about in a few, we wanted to make sure that we took some time to really check in with the community to make sure that we heard from everyone, some feedback about major decision points that we made last year, because we know that there is a lot of new staff, and sometimes, they weren't around last year to be a part of all the fun conversations with the blueprint conversations and the youth strategy. we wanted to make sure that we heard from everyone about those things. So we developed a survey, which is called the Youth Strategy Check-in Survey, and the link is in your chat box. It's the first link available, and it really gives you the opportunity to give us feedback on items such as the blueprint, the youth strategy, our work plan that we've developed, helping us know about the youth housing program designs, the work groups related to service interventions, some of our data-driven improvements, and items regarding YHDP, the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, Notice of Funding for Availability. So there are around 7 different topics in there that you have questions, and although that might sound a little bit daunting and long, each section is relatively short. So there's only 2 to 3 questions in each of the sections, and it really gives us the opportunity to know how all of you are feeling and, whether we're headed in the right direction, because we didn't want to make sure that we started to convene work groups or start to work on something and it wasn't in the appropriate direction that we would see our system going. So we don't have a limit as to how many people from the organization can complete. So, we really want to hear from our case managers, our directors and EDs on, how do you think all our decision points and whether we're directionally correct as we continue to take this work onto for the next coming months. So it is due back to us by April 12th. So please make sure that you do get into the survey and complete it, because we do want to pull all that feedback by this Wednesday. And our goal is to present it to the youth leadership team to see as a community how we're doing in the different topics. So if you have any questions, if anything sounds unfamiliar, you can always feel free to reach out to us. And I just have a question if there is a time on the 12th as to when that cutoff. So I would just say close of business day, and, that can be 5 p.m. I know everyone's close of business day runs a little bit differently. So I would just say, until, as long as you get it and it's still April 12th, we will take your feedback into consideration. So thanks for that question, Megan. All right. And also, if you want a PDF copy, right now it is live on the survey, on Survey Gizmo. If for some reason, I know we've run into a couple of agencies that maybe your IT department has blocked it off for some reason. If you are having some difficulty that, the link doesn't work for you or something of that nature, you can always feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to talk with you one-on-one to see how we can get your feedback. All right. The next item that we want to share with you is regarding the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. So for some of you that have been around with us, you know that this is the 3rd round of YHDP funding. Chicago has applied for the last 2 rounds. Unfortunately, we have not been awarded. But with the release of this YHDP NOFA, there is an opportunity for 25 communities to be selected, 8 of them which will be for rural. So YHDP is really geared toward developing and implementing a coordinated community approach to ending and preventing youth homelessness. And it's centered around 5 core objectives. It's to build national momentum, evaluate coordinated community approach, expand the capacity, evaluate performance measures, and establish a framework of federal programming and technical assistance. So we are, we do plan on applying as a community for YHDP funding in this round as well. We're doing things a little bit slightly different just because we have hired a grant writer to come and help us support because we know in the last 2 rounds we've had different individuals either from DFSS or All Chicago and DCFS to kind of take a stab at providing a response to each of the questions in the NOFA. We wanted to make sure that we provided a very unified response to HUD this time and really be able to update HUD as far as the great work that we've done since the last round of YHDP. For those of you that were with us last year, Carrie and I developed a debriefing document, which really, once the debriefing and the awards were announced for the last round, to really hone in as to what areas we could improve and what, would drive our work forward. So we're able to look back at that document and really strengthen our proposal for this time. With the survey that's going out that we just talked about, it's really going to help inform whether we want to continue with those major decision points. And we'll also be incorporating our Youth Advisory Board. So one of the things for YHDP is that the Youth Advisory Board provides a letter of support in which they're in agreement with the proposal that we are submitting. So we've already chatted with them about the release of YHDP, and they'll be having an additional meeting to kind of talk about the proposal and whether we're going in the right direction. And I'll take a pause because there's a question. So if the survey has been completed, what is the expectation? So that's a great question. So if you've already completed, so this is not YHDP, but the Youth Strategy Check-in Survey. If you've already completed the survey, so what we'll be doing is we'll be pulling in that survey feedback and be presenting it to the youth leadership on our on this week's meeting, so that way we know kind of what the community is saying. And hopefully if there's any changes that we need to do, we'll be discussing what that looks like, and you'll be hearing more about them. That's a great question. So regarding back to YHDP, so another big piece about YHDP is that they do ask for letters of support. So in the event that Chicago is selected as a YHDP community, HUD wants to know how many of our service providers and other stakeholders here in Chicago would help us support with developing the community plan, because we do want to make sure that we are, working in coordination with one another. So last year, many of you completed the letter of support letter to show how you would be, how you would demonstrate your participation, like whether that would be through a steering committee, but to really highlight that you are 100% dedicated to like helping us kind of, develop this plan. So we had a lot of different entities provide that letter of support. So we are hoping that many of you who did that last year would still want to continue with completing a letter of support. So one of the handouts that is in the GoToWebinar chat box is the YHDP FY 2018 letter of support template. So that document really is to show you as an agency or another entity, it gives some critical bullets as to what that participation would look like potentially. But we would really hope that your organization would complete the letter of support and send it back to us. So we are looking and hoping that those letters of support come back to us by April 22nd. So if you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me, and we can definitely set up a call to talk a little bit further on about those bullet points in the template. But if not, if everything sounds really clear, we would hope that you can put it on your agency's letterhead and have the appropriate staff representative sign off on it and just send it back to us. And we're hoping to have all those letters of support back to us by April 22nd. And then, as we continue to have our work with, chatting with the YAB members, getting our letters of support and working with our grant writer, we hope to have the submission in by May 15th. So that is something that Carrie and I will be working on with the grant writer in the next couple of weeks. Great. So I'll just take a quick pause just to see if anyone has any questions about YHDP before we move on. Great. If not, it doesn't sound like we have any questions, but you can always feel free to submit your questions via the chat box. If we have any time at the end, we can also open it up for some general questions and unmute the lines. Okay, we have a question. So will we get to see a copy of the application? So once we've written out the application and we've submitted, we've written out the proposal. We will post it to our website, similar to the recent years, onto the All Chicago website under the youth line of action. You'd be able to see a copy for review. Right. All right. Okay, the next thing that we have is regarding our work with ICF. We've hired a global consultant, which is named ICF, to really help us regarding the work that we've identified under the youth strategy regarding our program model, modifications, and new program creation. So last year during the blueprint process, we identified some new models. So one example was like the youth respite care, and we did it in a quick turnaround time because we wanted to include this response into last year's YHDP. But, as we continued to do our work, we started to land upon, we really don't know what we mean by youth respite care. So we've contracted with ICF to kind of help us think through what that model design would look like. In addition, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at our current models, such as youth transitional housing, youth interim, the new joint TH rapid rehousing models, and emergency shelters. We wanted to take a moment to look at these models and really dive into them and think, are all the elements in place, and is there anything that is missing from those current models that we need to bring forth to really fulfill the needs of young people experiencing homelessness. And I have a question. Okay, I think that was a question regarding the different housing models. So during the blueprint process, there were a little bit of new models that are currently not seen in Chicago. So if you have any ideas on something that you haven't seen in the blueprint, feel free to complete the youth survey and make sure that you kind of help us understand what that model is and how that fills the need here in our community. And we'll definitely be taking that into account. So ICF will be coming into town. So we've been working very closely with Nikki Paul and Marcy Thompson from ICF to kind of help us look at how we can approach, this program model modification and new program model creation. So we've been working with our youth leadership as well, because we wanted to make sure that as we get into developing the program model design, we wanted to make sure that we had the appropriate representation at the table. So we've discussed stakeholder names and the different entities that they represented. We reviewed it with the youth leadership, and we've been sending out invites, and currently we're obtaining confirmation. And our goal is really to ensure that we have all of the current model kind of entities present in the room, so that way we can hear, how is everyone currently operating their different programs, and also to make sure, we have invited some case managers that do the direct service to really hear, what is missing and what are they seeing in the young people that are currently in the models. What's missing from kind of the service array to kind of help on their path to achieving housing stability. So as we continue to get confirmation from those individuals, we'll be hosting 2 full-day workshops and really geared toward developing that program model. So although, if you have not received your invitation, don't feel bummed. That doesn't mean that you're kind of out of the loop. We will be having a community feedback session in June where we will open it up to everyone in the community, where you'll be able to hear, what came out of those 2 full-day workshops, and you'll have the opportunity to let us know what you think and whether we've missed a crucial step in that. So we'll be sharing more information about that date and location, hopefully by the next time we have our webinar call. So that way everyone can save the date. And we look forward to the conversation for those individuals that have already, set out that date and have it on their calendars. We look forward to the conversation that we have and are very excited to have ICF and help us kind of think through so that we can develop a system in according to the needs of our young people. So I'll take a few minutes if anyone has any questions regarding ICF. You can feel free to raise your hand, and I can definitely unmute you, or you can feel free to type your question in the chat box. All right. I don't see any questions. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Joanna and Richard from our Youth Advisory Board. Oh, I have a question. Okay. I think so. Sorry, I'm not a question about ICF. So I will turn it over to Richard and Joanna to talk to you about some of the exciting work from their end.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, guys. My name is Joanna Walker. I'm president of the Youth Advisory Board. Happy to see everybody. Well, I can't necessarily see everybody, but y'all can see me, so hi. I basically want to start with talking about the goals and basically where the Youth Advisory Board is trying to go as of right now. So we've been working with CPS and also a high school, Julian, talking with Principal Hessner, with one of our Youth Advisory Board members who attends the school. So basically what we're trying to accomplish is to basically create awareness throughout CPS so that students don't feel like they don't have that, right-hand person that they can turn to, when they need like different resources or different services or trying to find a place to stay or any of those things. And right now we're recruiting new members. So we're asking providers to just nominate some youth they come across with, as far as like, if they would be a perfect fit for the Youth Advisory Board, to give their experience or their lived experience or, something that they may have struggled with and they might need assistance with as well. So basically the process of nominations is that you get nominated by a provider, and then with that you would attend 2 of our Youth Advisory Board meetings, and then we would take a vote, and basically then you would be a new Youth Advisory Board.
Joanna, what do they get for participating in the Youth Advisory Board?
How can I forget? Okay, so we also receive cash stipends, which is basically $25 for participation and then $10 for transportation. And also we help with child care stipends as well for young parents as well. So it's well, the first 2 meetings that you attend, you do not receive your stipend. But then, like, when you're fully a member, then you will start receiving your stipends. And it's a great experience to, just come out, being able to talk to different providers, letting them know what direction we're trying to go in, trying to get out more in the community, let everybody know, like, this is what we're trying to get across. This is, like, we're trying to make a difference to basically stop youth homelessness in Chicago. So,
Joanna, do you participate in any of the CoC work groups?
Yes, I do. I have gone to a couple of different workshops, like where we got to speak with like CHA came out and talked to us. Also DCFS came and spoke and did a workshop, basically to let youth know like they're opening up a new program that helps like youth that have been I don't know, like I wouldn't be say kicked out of the system, but you reached the end of your days, and then you didn't get the services that you was promised, basically. And it takes us back to show different youth like what can be done and what's possible for people that feel like they didn't even receive anything but were basically kicked to the curb, and now they have to figure out everything on their own. So, did I miss anything?
How about the youth data or youth leadership?
The groups.
No, just you can talk about how there's numbers on.
So basically we have like different outside groups that we also attend, like the data work group, diversion, leadership, also rapid rehousing comes around every once in a while. And with those, it gives a chance for us as youth to get out and basically have our words heard as far as like where we feel like something could be done better or something could be portrayed just a little bit more better, basically just being able to hear from youth that, have experienced the same situation and can bring something to the table as well. You want to talk about CPS?
Yeah. Hello, you guys. My name is Richard, and I'm an active member of the Youth Advisory Board. Like I said, we've been doing a lot of things in the community. One of our biggest projects right now that we actually just got done and completed was actually visiting CPS and getting some things done with CPS. And we actually, Saturday, we had a meeting at ACA out west. And basically what the point of this meeting was basically to get some of the counselors from different schools to come and sit down and bring them awareness about the importance and understanding and addressing youth homelessness. And we hit key topics like how to recognize signs that a youth is homeless, and a couple of examples like maybe if you've seen a youth that was wearing the same clothing, or lack of school attendance, or like in my situation, being at school too much, are some signs that a student may be experiencing homelessness, or like I said, increase of appetite, are key signs. We also gave back information as far as if they do know of any youth experiencing homelessness, as far as giving them information as far as shelters, drop-in centers like Covenant House, the Crib, La Casa Norte, out south and out north, and just another key point that that also came up in our meeting was how to address to a youth parents that's dealing with homelessness. And I think one key issue was that involving DCFS was one thing that could be avoided, could be helpful, but also could be avoided because DCFS and their reputation have good and bad. So kind of just addressing youth homelessness to the parents and how to go about that. But those I want you to pick up the pregnancy.
Also with CPS, we talked about basically like how counselors can help students that are pregnant and parenting, because I feel like that's a big issue. And a lot of youth may get discouraged as far as like going to school, being able to like complete assignments and stuff of that nature. So just like being able to have that counselor that they can come to, so they can get like work situated, or being able to give them different resources as far as like meal or different shelters or anything of that nature, because it's really hard to be a parent and try to attend school as well. But we don't want to just be thrown into that bucket of people, that just drop out because, I don't have resources for this, or I don't have daycare, or anything like that. Things that can, be helped just by giving a referral or anything of that nature. Just being that person that this student can come to when they need some support.
Yes, and we just also wanted to stress to the counselors that in 2019, youth homelessness is actually a rapidly growing problem, and we just wanted to let the counselors know that to be more active in the youth's lives, be more of a support system for them, You know what I'm saying? If they know that a youth is experiencing homelessness, to actually be that shoulder to lean on, or that support system to, because like a lot of youth that are experiencing homeless might not be comfortable or not be able to advocate for themselves. So just being a bigger advocate for the youth that can't advocate for themselves. So, and like I said, it was a very productive meeting, and we got a lot accomplished. So I'm proud of the Youth Advisory Board and what we have accomplished so far.
And also, we're working with Julian, which is one of the Youth Advisory Board's members' school that they attend, basically to bring awareness to the school, to just give different resources to the youth that they may not have. But we don't want to make it like a huge issue to where like they feel uncomfortable, or they may feel like they can't, pull someone to the side or say anything, just basically letting them know that they have options. And it's different programs that are out here shaped just to help youth when they're dealing with this situation. And also to go back to the recruiting, like we're mostly geared towards youth that are experiencing homelessness self-wise, as far as like homeless with their kids, or like not necessarily still living with family, mostly like if you're just out here homeless by yourself. I don't know if that made sense, but it.
And as far as Julian, we're really trying to take a more hands-on approach, you know what I'm saying, by actually going into the schools and getting real personal with the students, because we feel as though, as us being in some of the situations that some of these kids have been through, that we're the best to go out there and actually sit down and in a sense, bond with the kids, you know what I'm saying, get them comfortable to, at first step is admitting, you know what I'm saying, that, you know what I'm saying, they're going through this situation. And the second step is, you know what I'm saying, to change the situation, you know what I'm saying, and like I said, advocate for themselves. So we're really trying to take a hands-on approach, like I said, by going to the school and talking to the seniors, the juniors, the freshmen, the sophomores, and like I said, and let them know, like, and give information like pamphlets and like I said, what we were trying to do, like a $5 raffle, you know what I'm saying, just be, you know what I'm saying, a light to some of the kids at some of these schools that are going through these situations. So.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So if anyone has, if you're connected with the school, as you can hear, our young people have kind of reached through some of their connections to really go out and talk to principals or STLS contacts that we have here at All Chicago and DFSS. But if you know of a high school that you feel would be a really good fit and you have a strong partnership with them already, you can always feel free to reach out to me and we can kind of connect you with the Youth Advisory Board. They do meet one time a month on a Saturday evening, to kind of just discuss ideas. And they also have their goals, and we've aligned them. We're all in alignment with our youth strategies, so it's very helpful to hear some of the work that they're doing right now with CPS and strengthening that partnership. We have a question. So, how much is the child care stipends for the member of the Youth Advisory Board? So the child care stipend is a $45. So for those that are parent and pregnancy. So if you do have, we know that sometimes that could be a barrier for young people to participate in the Youth Advisory Board. So we do provide that stipend for them. And then there's a question about trying a suggestion to try some community colleges and suburban schools. So unfortunately, we would not do suburban schools just because our parameters would be within the city limits, just because the continuum of care is within the city limits. But that's a great suggestion, and I think maybe moving forward, we will look to expanding. Then we have another question. Do they have to be enrolled in a CPS school? If you could send a little bit of clarification, what do you mean? Like if the student has to be enrolled in CPS, or and I'll just kind of try to answer that question. If you know of a young person that's enrolled in CPS, CPS is also, we would kind of classify them as one of our service providers. I know they don't fit kind of that service provider title, but we do take nominations from CPS as well. So, counselors can also submit the nomination form. And the reason why we do a nomination kind of way is that we want to make sure that we are connected with the service provider, or, that entity that is connected with that young person. Sometimes we know that young people, join the youth advisory board, and then, they may move on to bigger and greater things, which is great. Sometimes they let us know, they get a job, they go away to college, and it's wonderful. We hate to see them go, but we know that they're going on with their lives, and we welcome that change. And for others, sometimes, we do see that it is helpful to be connected with that other entity. So that way, in case an issue arises or they need some additional supports, we have that service provider to really reach out and connect so that we can kind of help support that young person in, whether they're going through a crisis or something of that nature. So a service provider can submit the nomination, CPS, DCFS, those of you that are working out in the field. If you know of a young person that would be a great asset to the Youth Advisory Board, please complete the nomination form. If they are in college, they are also eligible to attend. The age range is from 16. So any young person ages 16 to 24. Right. So if you know of a young person that is 16 to 24, please, and would be a great add-on, please submit the nomination form. I believe it's in one of the handouts. I can't see it. I was having some issue with that. But you can always find the nomination form on the All Chicago website under the youth line of action.
I think our age range might change. And they have got
So I'm hearing that maybe the age range was extended to a little bit more than 24. So we'll definitely include that in a follow-up email once we verify that. All right. So thanks, everyone. It sounds like everyone was submitting some questions. So thank you for all those questions about the Youth Advisory Board. As you can hear, they're doing a lot of work, and we can hope to continue to share more information about the wonderful work they're doing. And I have someone's raising their hand. Let me try to find. Okay, I have Jerry who wants to ask a question. So I'm going to unmute you, Jerry. Can you hear me, Jerry?
Yeah.
Hi, Jerry. You have a question for us?
No. Sorry. I must have hit something in technology that I'm not used to. Sorry, guys. Great meeting though.
Thanks, Jerry. So I'm gonna mute you again and just lower your hand. Okay. But thanks. So yes, so we'll be sending out the nomination form in the follow-up email. I think one thing to note about this webinar is that we do record it, so everyone is being recorded. All your questions are being recorded, and we'll be posting it to the All Chicago website under the Youth Line of Action, so that way maybe if a colleague of yours wasn't able to join, we know everyone is busy. You're doing the marvelous work on the ground, meeting with young people experiencing homelessness or housing instability. So we understand that maybe, although you would love to join our webinars, sometimes that is not a possibility. So it is being recorded so that way you're able to view it at a later time. Also for all those outreach workers that work, the evening hours, they can always feel free to listen to us and send us some questions even after the webinar. And we'll also be sending out a follow-up email with all the forms included in the email as well. If you don't receive the email from Carrie or myself, that means we may not have you listed as a task force, attendee or on our listserv. So you can always feel free to reach out to us. My email address is eperez@allchicago.org, and we are more than happy to add you onto that listserv. All right. So now that we've talked about that, now I'm going to turn it over to Brooke from the Night Ministry, and she's going to talk to you about diversion. So, Brooke, are you still there?
I sure am, Elizabeth. Let me get this going on this side. Does that work?
Great. So I can see your screen, Brooke.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me on today. My name is Brooke, as Elizabeth said, and I am a youth outreach professional for the night ministry, and my pronouns are she and her. And today I have the great pleasure of talking to you guys about diversion. It's going to be really quick. Hopefully, if you guys have any questions, I'll definitely answer to the best of my ability. So with the PowerPoint, of course, we're starting off with empowering through conversation. A lot of people think that diversion is more of a program or something that they can be put into, but in all reality, the main focus of diversion is the conversation. So what is diversion? Diversion is, like I said, a conversation that fosters creative solutions for alternative housing options outside of shelters. Also empowering persons facing imminent homelessness to identify safe and appropriate housing options other than the street, car, or shelter, and assisting them in avoiding shelter and returning immediately to housing. Diversion is not a barrier to shelter, and the focus is on empowering persons in crisis to begin regaining control over their situation and their lives. So once again, diversion is not saying you can never go to a shelter, but we want to come up with a way or help them come up with a way to see exactly where they can go without going into the shelter right away. So when and where can diversion happen? In their own place, doubling up, meaning double up if you're staying with a friend or staying with an aunt, multiple people in one house, or at the emergency shelter. So usually we see during the own place or the doubling up, that's when the prevention activities happen to make sure that they can stay in that place. And then usually we see diversion, those conversations happening once they're leaving that doubled up situation and trying to enter the shelter. But the arrow actually goes both ways because it can happen anywhere. Say, for instance, you find a young person at the emergency shelter who is a great candidate for diversion. We can definitely work the other way. So when do we call this intervention diversion? So of course we talk about prevention, we talk about rapid rehousing, but right in the middle we want to stick diversion there. And it's, of course, people are requesting shelter at the front door, any program, system entry points. We're trying to figure that out right now. We actually do have a work group for diversion, which we do have members of the Youth Advisory Board that help us out a lot. Thank you guys. Shout out to you guys for that. But they help us out a lot in regards to what exactly we need to say in the conversations and where we can meet them at and what time of day, when do they want to talk about this, or when do they even want to have the conversation? Or is the word diversion scary to them, or do we have to switch it up? So we're actually working on that right now. And then, of course, our outcomes for diversion. I love data. We want to see exactly how it's going to work for us. But diversion actually can permanently put them back with their friends or family. It can return them to their own space, temporarily divert them as they're seeking new housing, or relocating permanently to a safe place out of town. So really quickly, I want to give you examples of what that looks like. So permanently back at a friend's or family's home. Say, for instance, I meet John on the street because I am a youth outreach worker. I'll definitely ask him, where'd you go? Well, where'd you spend the night last night? Or where'd you hang out last night? And of course, building that rapport with him, in that quick second, he'll be able to tell me exactly where he was. Say, for instance, he was at his grandmother's house, but they got into it because he didn't wash the dishes. At that point, we can talk about, okay, maybe staying back at grandma's house and washing the dishes. That's a really easy example, but I'll give that one for the webinar. Returning to their own space, depending on the funding, of course, within the agency. Say, for instance, they don't have the rent money for that particular month. But then once their money keeps rolling in because they do have a stable job, for the past 6 months, we know that their job history has been great. It's just this month has been a little iffy for them. If the agency does have funding, they'll be able to front that month's rent for them, or temporarily diverted as they seek new housing. Say, for instance, you can stay with your aunt for 3 months committed, but then after that, we'll work on getting your own apartment, and then relocating permanently to a safe place out of town. We have a lot of young people who come from out of town and aren't able to get back home because they don't have the fare to travel back to Louisiana or to Arizona or to California. If we can help them with that, we definitely try to do that, even if it's not so much of the money, but they're afraid to go back because they have not spoken to that family member. They haven't spoken to that friend. We're able to actually talk to the friend, kind of like a mediation type of thing if they would like us to do so. Of course, we're not biased whatsoever. They're in the room with us if they would like to be. And we can talk to the family member or the friend to make sure that they're safely housed once they get there, and then talk to a connecting agency that's also in that state to make sure that that young person is safe. Quick reminder about diversion, because I'm sure there's going to be many questions going forward. Remember that homelessness is a crisis, and people are usually not at their best when under this stress. So yes, we know that right away we want to get their IDs. Right away they want to get this. But sometimes they just want to talk about it. And during that talking, venting session, that's where the diversion can actually start. Help them realize strengths and resources that they've forgotten. A lot of the times young people come in and they're defeated, or I don't want to talk about my mom. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that. That's totally fine. However, you can make sure you highlight things that they have been forgotten. Oh, I've had a job for 3 years before, but I was laid off. The fact that you can tell them that that was actually a victory, those 3 years that they stayed within that position, that gives them, that reminds them of the power that they still have. Also visualizing, sitting next to them, supporting them in how they choose to address the problem. We are not practicing adultism whatsoever. We want to make sure that they are in control of their own life, and they are definitely the experts of their lives, so we don't want to tell them what to do. Also, the biggest one for me is everyone is not a diversion candidate, and that is okay. Sometimes it's okay to put them in CES. It's okay for them to go into the shelter. It's totally fine. It's totally up to them. However, we want to make sure that we're able to identify the triggers for diversion and make sure we know exactly how to go about using that particular tool. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, it's totally okay. It's just another turn that we have to make. So where are we now? As I stated, we do have a diversion planning information work group. We meet every 2 weeks, and then we also set up different subgroups. So of course, this one's for youth, and I'm on the youth subgroup for that. We analyze and we refine, create, and formalize the diversion process to solidify a way to incorporate diversion into the front end crisis system, delivery, screening, and trainings. And we want to make sure that we can do that for Chicago. There's 15 trainers that are able to go to different agencies once we roll all of this out to train everyone on diversion, just to see exactly how it's going to look in the Chicagoland area. That will enhance the diversion process. So if you need to know exactly who to call for diversion, you have an access point that you know exactly who to call, when to call, and how to have that conversation with that specialist. So the diversion process map for all populations, I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what that looks like and what the timeline is, where does data come in, and how does this work. So you have 14 days to actually divert someone. Within those first 2 days, that's the most critical because that's when you first meet them. When you first meet them, you have to have the identifier. That's what we will be training on. And then depending on, say, for instance, the frontline staff at a drop-in center or emergency shelter, or even an outreach worker, if they're not the diversion specialist, then they'll be able to refer them to the diversion specialist if they think that they're a candidate. That's when afterwards they'll have that diversion conversation, which is literally just talking. It's not asking too many questions. 9 times out of 10, the diversion specialist is listening. I would say 75% of the time they're listening. Then after that, they're connected to resources. And then, of course, there is always a follow-up because we want to make sure that we build rapport and keep that rapport with that young person. So with that, I am all done with the presentation. And I wanted to see if maybe there are questions or comments or concerns, maybe. So let me switch it right back over to you, Elizabeth.
So you do have one question, Rebecca. You have, will I be able to get a copy of this presentation?
I can send some of the information to you. So then you can know exactly what diversion is. But once we actually roll out everything, there will be more information in regards to what diversion is. A lot of the information is being received from the Cleveland Mediation Center, who actually trained us on it, and then also with us working through the process of rolling out diversion. But I can definitely send you what diversion is, yes.
And then you have another question. They said, thanks so much, Brooke. Can you clarify the difference the difference functionality between diversion and prevention.
Yes. So with preventing, that's more of on the front end, and the diversion is more of the conversation. So that's why I have the slide up. Oh wait, can I actually go back to my slide, Elizabeth, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Can I do that? Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. And I will shuffle through this, guys, right here. Okay. So the housing situation for prevention is the risk of losing housing. With diversion, they're requesting shelter. So it's at two different stages. It can sound similar, but there are differences, yet they are somewhat similar. It's kind of hard to separate the two, but it's really, to me, the point in time that it's happening. Hopefully that answers the question, and even this slide can help you out a little bit.
Okay. Then someone asked, if someone was in need of emergency funds for rental assistance or help with a security deposit, what would that look like?
Well, right now we have Tracy Blackburn, who works for Catholic Charities. She is a diversion specialist for youth over there. And usually what I do is, say, for instance, I have a young person who is a great candidate for diversion. He has a job. He makes about $900 per week. But right now he's just having an issue with solidifying an apartment, and he's staying with his friend up north. He has a good work history. It's just, this particular young person, he had an issue with family background. So I literally emailed Tracy and I said, this is his story. This is what's going on. Are you able to have this conversation with him? Because my particular agency doesn't have that program set up yet. I know that hers does, and she does have funding for it. So I literally just refer them over to them, and she's able to see if they can qualify for that. She also does have different connections with landlords, depending on what area it is, and to see if they qualify for that first month's rent and the security deposit. But say, for instance, that is granted to them, we want to make sure that they understand that it's that one-time thing and it's not reoccurring. So we want to make sure that we do know that individual, and we do want to make sure that they understand that once this happens, it's done after that.
Great. Then we have another question. Can you talk about how diversion would help reduce homeless?
Absolutely. So say, for instance, I like examples. I'm a really big example girl, so stick with me, guys. If I have someone, say, for instance, I have 4 young people that are wanting to leave a home, and they're all leaving because of the same thing. They got into it with their parents. I see that a lot. If we're able to have that diversion conversation with them, listen to what they have to say, and then also remind them that they are still in control of their lives, but maybe we just need a little bit more time to see where we can go and what path we can take together, of course, because we are supporting them. Let's see how we can do that without you being outside on the street. So once we have that conversation, once they say, okay, well, maybe it's not that bad if I just do this at home just for a second. Of course, they're not in a violent situation. We want to make sure that is number one. They are safe in the home, but making sure that we can keep those lines open, that will keep them off of the street. Or say, for instance, they're living with auntie, and auntie says that their responsibility was to pay the light bill. They're not paying the light bill because they're spending on other things, which is totally fine. It's their money. However, we want to make sure that they're able to stay with auntie. And if we have that conversation with auntie and she's like, if you pay the light bill, they can stay. Okay, that's preventing homelessness as well. We're going to make sure that they stay with auntie. If they don't have the money to pay the light bill that day, then we can try to come up with the money then. They're off the street and they're not into the shelter. So the main thing with diversion is making sure that they don't end up in the shelter. A lot of times young people will go into the shelter and not even think about the other people that are there. So one of the creative ways that I would ask them is there anyone in your life right now that doesn't know what you're going through that may be willing to help? And sometimes I don't even think about it like that. So I think it's more of asking them the question in regards to making sure that they don't end up in a downward spiral, but making sure that they know that they don't have to go into the shelter, but it's an option for them. Totally up to them, but we can try to work our way away from it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great. Thanks, Brooke. So I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going to let you choose if you want a question from the chat box or someone who has their hand raised.
Oh, that's hard, Elizabeth. Someone with their hand raised, I'd like to hear someone's voice.
Okay, so Maria, I am going to unmute you to ask your question. Oh, Maria, it looks like you muted yourself.
There you go. Sorry. I'm here. Hi. Actually, I do have a question I was thinking about. So besides the question I asked. So if there's a difference, you're saying there's a difference between being homeless and not being homeless. So would you be able to identify the difference? If you're just having problems with your mom, would that still be called diversion or help with be a diversion category? I know that's sort of. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. So are you asking if diversion can happen at both places? Or are you saying that are you asking if it only could happen if you're outside of the house? Or I'm trying to figure out if that's what you're asking. Are you asking where does diversion take place? Or what qualifies you for diversion?
Maria, I think you muted yourself again. So if you just want to unmute yourself. Okay, we're having a little bit of.
There it is. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. There was a little difficulty there. No, I'm more saying like, why can't? I'm having a hard time saying this. The diversion, how is it, like, do you have any signs of diversion, or it just depends on the situation? That's what I'm trying to ask.
So it's not so much of signs, but there are triggers. So remember, everyone can't be diverted. So it's not a program. It's really just a tool. So keep reminding yourself that it's not a program. It's not something that, I can be diverted because of this, or I can be diverted because of that. It's really just a situation depending on that person and that person's story and that person's history.
Great.
I know that's very vague.
All right. Thanks, Brooke. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to, cut you off. I know you had more questions in the chat box. If anyone else has any other questions, please ask them in the chat box. We'll be more than happy to send a response to you after the webinar, just to, connect you with Brooke, and you guys can continue the conversation. But thanks, Brooke, for joining us. It was a wonderful presentation and lots of great questions.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So we're down to 2 minutes. One thing that I wanted to share, and that is available in the chat box. So many of you may have heard that we've started our youth training series, a few months ago, or last month. A few months ago, sorry. It's been a while. So, last year during the task force meeting, we identified that there is a need for us to bring youth trainings, to our providers, because we wanted to be sensitive to the needs of our sector that is receiving a lot of youth matches. And we heard, on both ends that we wanted to be more equipped to serve young people being matched to the different housing providers. So we kicked off our training series, and we have a new one that it will be coming May 29th. So we have Ann Holcomb from Unity Parenting and Counseling that will be doing a presentation that is called Teaching Life Skills, Train the Trainer. So she will be going and providing a presentation to gain the understanding and ways of how people learn and how to build your own life skills curriculum for clients that you're seeing at your program, as well as, looking at the different life skills domains and which are most essential to teaching. And so she'll be going, we've heard through word of mouth that Anne has a great curriculum that she does at her agency, but we wanted to, make sure that everyone had the same chance to see that same training. So that way, if you're able to go to the training, you can build that same curriculum at your agency. So we're sharing that wealth of knowledge. So if Anne's on the call, big shout out to her for really stepping up and being able to do this presentation. So, we met with her here, staff from all Chicago, to kind of just review. So it looks awesome. So we're very excited to bring this on. Someone says, I don't see the handout or the link. So if you look at the chat box, I'll go ahead and just copy it again. Let me see if I can share my screen. I don't know if I can. I'll send so you do have to register for the training using the LMS software through All Chicago. So make sure that you do, if you don't have, an LMS username and password, you can definitely sign up. There is no charge. There is, I believe, CEUs for this training. So, if you're looking for CEUs, that's also another option. So we're very excited to bring this out. If you have any questions, you can definitely click on the link and read the description in its entirety. It is May 29th. So please, save the date and the time. We'll be bringing more of these trainings to you in the next coming months. So we'll make sure that, we either send it via email or share it in our youth action calls. But thank you, everyone. I know we're a little bit past 2 minutes, so thank you for everyone staying on the call. I know we had a lot of questions this time around, which is wonderful because it's not just me talking to dead air. And thank you to Brooke and Beth for joining us, and Jawan and Richard, who are joining me in person. We really appreciate everyone's time to come and talk. But if you have any questions and you didn't have a chance to type them in, again, feel free to submit them in the chat box. We'll definitely respond to you via email. And we look forward to chatting again with you next month. Bye, Richard. Say bye. Bye. All right, bye.